There are really two ways to get your project made. Number one is to be able to raise the money and find all the funding yourself, which is, as we know, not that easy, which is why all of you are here, because you don't have all the money to make projects yourself typically. Most film projects are independently financed, though. Everybody knows, the big studio projects, all the big films that are coming out, those are anomalies. Everything when it comes to the independent film world, even talking about $5–10 million independent films, those are all independently sourced and independently financed in some way. There's a variety of ways that people go about getting all of your funding. Crowdfunding nowadays is hugely popular and can be really successful, but it takes a ton of work. It's almost like you have to plan your entire crowdfunding campaign and spend 3 to 6 months doing that before you even think about making your film, because it is so time consuming just to do that. Of course, spending your own money to make your film, which a lot of people do, raising money from friends and family, which essentially is what crowdfunding ends up being, unless you find a way to really hit an audience to raise money for a project that doesn't include friends and family. Finding investors for your project, that's a completely other separate workshop that we're not even going to talk about today, because again, that's a whole other rabbit hole that you'll go down. And then there's a lot of grants that you can get from film festivals, nonprofit organizations, agencies, things like that, as far as ways to fund and find money for your project, if that's what you're looking for, is independently financing and funding your project. So we'll probably do another workshop. I've done ones on film finance and producing before, so we'll probably refocus on that one at some point, just because it's another question we kind of get all the time. So when you talk about your screenplay or your idea, there's really, again, two ways to get it done, like I said. The second one is a production company, producer, film investor reads your screenplay or loves your pitch and decides that they're going to make your project. The problem a lot of times is that unless you're established in the industry, getting somebody to read your script or listen to your idea or hear your pitch is next to impossible. How many people have actually tried to go out there and pitch their projects or send screenplays out and find ways to get it done? So a few people. So the big question then is, how do you get somebody that has that decision-making power, or has a film fund, or has a production company that's looking for projects to take your project on, essentially? Well, first you have to know where film and TV projects come from. Number one, established writers that are in the industry. That's kind of a no-brainer. If you're established, people know who you are, they come to you looking for projects. Established production companies. So if you have a production company that has done film and TV projects before that have been successful, somebody's going to come to you and ask you for projects. What are you working on? What do you got? What are you doing? What are you looking for? Web series, podcasts, and social media are actually where a lot of producers and a lot of production companies are finding content nowadays. And the reason is because these are already established with an audience. They already show some level of success and something that people are interested in. Podcasts right now, it's sort of the golden age of podcasts. I kind of associate it like 1930s radio. Everybody sat around and listened to the radio, and nobody watched TV because TV didn't exist at that time. And then podcasts have essentially become that new thing. People listen to them while they're driving in their car, while they're exercising, whatever else. But you're getting these huge audiences for podcasts, and the barrier to entry is really small. You can literally record it on your phone if you want, and then just post it to the internet. And if you've got something that's compelling that people want to listen to, you can get thousands and thousands or millions of people listening to your podcast. And so podcasts now are where a lot of production companies are finding resources as far as concepts that they want to turn into film or television series. And then the same thing with social media. A few years ago, there was a Twitter feed called Shit My Dad Says. And it had developed a really big following, and they turned it into a TV series on CBS with William Shatner. It only lasted a season or two, but that's just an example of where people are finding content for things nowadays. Hollywood is very risk averse, and so they're looking for anything that is established with an audience already that's going to be a proven commodity, essentially. Books, of course. Anytime you've got a book that does well, people are going to look to that because, again, it's something that's already established. Reboots are, of course, very popular because, again, the biggest question that a film company asks when they're going to produce something is not, is this going to be a good movie? Will people like this film? It's, how can I market this? How can I market this is what determines what a project gets made. Because it's really, it's a business. It's all about making the money. So how can I market this project in order to make money off of it? That's why projects get picked up or decided upon. Screenplay contests and screenplay websites, and then spec scripts. So a lot of what we're talking about here, what you guys have, how many people have a script? Okay, so a lot of people have a script. How many people just have an idea but no script? And a little bit of both. So if you've got a script, but you don't have any way to get it out there, it's called a spec script, which is short for speculative. So everybody knows what speculative means, right? Basically, yeah. Most people in this room, I would think, you don't want to be a producer, right? You just want somebody, just take my movie, just take my idea, just make this. I'm just a writer, I just want this to get done. I don't want to have to go through the work and the trouble of being a producer. That's not who I am or what I do. I just wrote this project, somebody please make this for me. So here's the truth from Hollywood, essentially. Nobody knows who you are, is always the big issue. People work with people that they know and they like. That's why you see the same writers, the same producers, the same actors in the same projects over and over again. They've got these pre-established relationships that they know these people, they trust them, and so they're going to keep going back to that well over and over again, essentially. And the attitude, and this comes directly from literary managers that I've talked to, that I'm friends with in LA, producers, a little bit of everybody, is, look, I moved out here and I slept on a couch and I had 4 roommates and I ate ramen noodles and I built myself up in the industry and built my network. Why can't you do the same thing? That's the attitude that they have out there, basically. It's like, this is how I did it. I started at the bottom and I just moved out here and worked my way up. You should do that too. Why should they talk to you or look at your script? What is it about you or what you have that makes you better than their Rolodex, in their phone of 1,000 people that they know that are living in LA that are established in the industry? And it's a great idea. Okay? So you got a great idea. So what does that mean? Do you have a script off your great idea? Do you have a producer attached? Do you have talent attached? Are you an established writer? There's a lot of great ideas of these writers that I know that already live out here. Why should I listen to your great idea? So that's, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm telling you what I've heard and what the general attitude is when it comes to, here's my idea, here's my project, here's what I'm looking to do. Why should I listen to your idea? So think about this, because I know a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll just take their screenplay and they'll email it off to an agency like CAA or WME or APA or something like that, or they'll make cold calls or whatever it might be. Well, there's a lot of people around that have ideas or screenplays they're trying to get out there. I think 100 calls a day is probably really, really, really low, but I used it because it's a nice round number. So think about how many calls or emails these agencies are getting on a daily basis. 36,000 a year. It's probably closer to like 100,000 a year that they're getting. So why should they listen to you when you're calling? What is it about your phone call or your email that you're just randomly sending them that they should take the time to listen to you? That's why they generally have a policy of no submissions unless they're asking for it, basically. But their policy is no outside submissions are accepted. And there's a good reason for it because they're getting thousands and thousands of random people calling. Who has the manpower or the time to kind of go through that? You don't have the physical ability or the time or the money to do that, essentially, which is why they call up the writers that they know. They're an agency. They already have their writers that that are within their agency. They've got literary managers that they work with. So that's where they go to find their projects. So the big question is how do you get their attention? There's that quote, God helps those that help themselves. Well, Hollywood kind of feels the exact same way. What are you doing? And this applies actually to actors as well. I hear this all the time when you talk to people talking about actors. What classes are you taking? Are you doing any theater? Even if it's small community theater or whatever, what are you doing to help yourself besides just I'm showing up for auditions because they're auditions. Well, besides that audition, what are you doing? What are you doing to make yourself a real professional to improve your craft on a daily basis? So again, that's a whole other workshop. Rose could speak to that very much when it comes to actors, but it's the same general consensus when it comes to writers. Are you sending your screenplays off to screenplay contests? Are you getting coverage on your screenplays from professional readers that are going to tell you, honestly what they think about your screenplay? And not to say that every single person, what they say about your screenplay is right, but that's why you get multiple coverage, because if multiple people are saying the same thing and they don't know who you are, then there's a general consensus about, whether it's structure or concept or whatever it might be about your particular project. Are you part of any screenwriting groups? Are you doing any sort of, ongoing screenwriting classes? Are you reading books? Are you writing every day? Are you doing something to improve yourself as a screenwriter every day? Just like if you were, an athlete and you're going to practice every day for, basketball practice or soccer, lacrosse, or whatever it might be, writing is the exact same thing. What are you doing to improve yourself on a daily basis, essentially? There's a few great books that are sort of industry standard. The Hollywood Standard, The Writer's Journey, Save the Cat, Robert McKee's Story, and Screenwriter's Bible are all really good ones if you need any suggestions. And this will all be up and posted later so that you guys can, see all this as well. So how do you actually get their attention then? So now that you're doing these things to improve yourself on a daily basis, how do you actually get them to pay attention to you? Number one, get professional coverage on your screenplays. Have someone tell you, what they think that is a professional within the industry, and get it from multiple sources. Now, this generally isn't free. You're going to have to pay for the coverage, but it's definitely worth it because you can see what people think of your screenplay. And it's not just what people think. They're going to break down the structure of your screenplay, the characters, the plot, the premise, all the different aspects that go into it, because people are looking at a screenplay not from the perspective of, is this a good story? Is this a funny story? Is this structured properly? Hollywood, when it comes to screenplays, it's very much structure. It's, I would say, 100% structure driven. Unless you want to make French New Wave films or something like that aren't going to follow a typical, 3-act structure, you won't have to worry about it. But you're not going to get anybody in the industry that's going to want to make your project unless you're really, following that structure. There are some amazing contests. Well, there's a reason that these are really, really well known and really, really great ones. Screencraft is really great. I think they were even just running a contest for the screenplay that was chosen would get like $1 million to actually produce the film. The Blacklist started, it's probably 15 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, something like that. There was an agent in Hollywood who decided to basically pull his other agent friends and say, what's the best screenplay that you've read this year that hasn't been made within, our group or whatever. He compiled that list and then called it the Blacklist. So these are scripts that everybody thought were great, but nobody had actually made these scripts. So he started publishing this Blacklist every year, and then all of a sudden, this is the Blacklist script. And then people started making those Blacklist scripts because they realized, well, all of these agents, all these people really like these scripts. There must be a reason that they're not getting made. We don't know what that is, but everybody likes it, so we're going to make it. Does everybody know who Tom Flynn is? A local writer here. Anybody know Tom? So Tom Flynn was in LA for a long time, written a whole bunch of stuff. Was one of those guys that you may not know his name or may not have seen his name, but he's probably written on hundreds of different projects. One of these people that's asked to come in and write on a film after somebody else has written it before it gets made, as well as writing his own screenplays. Well, he had a project called Gifted that was on the Blacklist, and it starred Octavia Spencer, Chris Evans, $15 million film. Entire film took place in St. Pete, but they shot it in Savannah, Georgia. That's a whole other story that we won't get into. But anybody see that film? It's been on HBO and everything. Did really well theatrical. I think at the time, last year and a half ago when it came out, it was one of the highest grossing independently released films of the year. So it did really well. And that's because that screenplay was on the Blacklist. That's how that project got made. Well, what the Blacklist has progressed to is not just having people within the industry take a look at projects, but they've now created a database where you can send your screenplay to the blacklist and have it listed on their website. You can get coverage from them. They'll rate your screenplay in a bunch of different categories, ranking from 1 to 10, give it an overall score, and then producers literally go to the blacklist and look for projects to pick up and make. And so it's a very, very popular, very good, very well-known industry resource now. Same kind of thing with Inktip. Anybody familiar with Inktip? Yeah? Inktip gets a lot of projects made as well. Inktip is, again, an online database where you can submit your screenplay to Inktip. It'll be listed on there, and writers, producers, whoever can scroll through. And actually what they do for producers, you have to be a vetted producer. You can't just be somebody who says they're a producer. You have to be a vetted producer. They then allow you access to their database, and then they will let you read through and look for scripts for whatever whatever they want. So I don't know why I thought of this, but I came up with this sort of craft beer analogy for your screenplay. Think of your spec script like a craft beer, basically. Do you want to sell your beer out of the trunk of your car, or do you want to sell your beer at a grocery store? If you're calling up producers and you're calling up agencies and you're just randomly trying to find somebody to make your script like that, it's kind of like walking up to somebody, opening the trunk of your car and say, hey, I got this beer I made in my bathtub, do you want to try it? The response generally isn't going to be as good as if they see your craft beer sitting on the shelf at Publix. And be like, oh, this beer is sitting on the shelf at Publix. It's an independently made beer, but it must be pretty good because it's here on the shelves. Same thing as these screenplay contests then. So if you've got a screenplay that is on Inktip, and there's a producer and says, I'm looking for a family-friendly movie with dogs, and he starts scrolling through and he's got 100 screenplays to look through. And all it has is a log line, and you can click on the log line, and it'll then take you to the next page where you can get some more information about that particular project. So you've got 100 of them, and you're scrolling through there, and it says log line, and it says won this award, won this award. Log line, won this award, won this award. Log line, no awards, log line, no awards, log line, no awards. You're scrolling through. Which ones are you going to stop first and take a look at? The ones that won awards. The ones that somebody has already told you, this is really good, it's won some awards. So it might have a really cool log line, but the first ones of those 100, I'm going to read the first 10 that have those award accolades next to them before I start looking at the ones that don't have any awards associated with them at all. And I think most people would be the same way, right? Because again, it's just kind of, as humans, the way our brains work. Somebody else already tells us it's good, so we're like, oh, if somebody else says it's good, then we'll take a look. But things like I said, hosting your script on Inktip or Blacklist or these other resources is kind of like putting your craft beer on the shelf at a grocery store so that people can then pick and choose the different types and flavors that they like. It's like, this is a thriller, I'm looking for thrillers. This is a horror, this is a family-friendly, this is a sci-fi. It gives you a wide variety of choices as opposed to the guy or girl with, a trunk full of craft beer. They maybe, they tell you it's a thriller, but you're not looking for a thriller, so why would you buy that craft beer out of the trunk of his car kind of thing. Not the perfect analogy, but I think it kind of, get it? Everybody kind of makes sense where I'm going with that? So somebody likes your script, just like I said a minute ago, doesn't mean that they're actually going to make it. They like your style, they like what you've done as a writer, they may ask you to write something else. A big thing always is, well, what else you got? Yeah, I read that script, it was good, I liked your style, but, I'm not really interested in making that kind of movie. What else do you have? What else you got? You should always have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scripts in the pipeline. There are screenwriters that I've talked to that just say, I write 2 spec scripts a year, just to have them. And then I write it, great, I get some coverage maybe, I put it on shelf, and I keep working. There are people who will take one script and then for 20 years do nothing but try and get their one script made. Somebody maybe reads it and likes it, and they're like, yeah, I like this, but I don't want to make this. What else do you have? Well, for 20 years, you've been doing nothing trying to get that one script made. Now they want something else from you, and you don't have anything. You could have written 40 scripts, and now you've got, okay, I've got these other 40 for you to choose from. So I know it's very hard because we have our passion projects a lot of times, something that we want to make that we're really passionate about, that we want to do, but it doesn't mean anybody else is actually passionate about that as well. So, you know, what else do you have that you can give them or that you can show them, basically? Another big thing for getting projects made is having a proof of concept. So proof of concept is, you know, the term du jour within the industry right now. People want to see, like we talked about earlier with the podcasts, social media, web series, whatever it might be, they want to see something that is established that already has been built up. So there are a ton of web series that have been turned into feature films, TV series, other things now because they've been established and they've built up an industry. When I was talking about the Sundance Labs a little while ago, there is a project that is looking to shoot here that has been in development for probably 4 years now. It's called The Dance Crusader. It takes place in Florida. We're just trying to get it to our area of Florida. The writer had the film at the Sundance Labs. He's represented by ICM. He is an AFI graduate, and they're making him shoot a proof of concept before they do anything as far as funding this film. So this is somebody who's gone through the labs, who's established, who's won awards, who's done contests, and he still had to raise $60,000 or somewhere in that range to shoot a proof of concept for this project before they will make it. Because people still want to see, yeah, we can read this, yes, we know this is good, but what is it going to look like? What is this going to be before we make it? You know, there's projects like Whiplash was, you know, famously a short film before it was turned into, you know, an award-winning film. So proof of concept is always a big thing. You know, even if it's just to do one scene from a film, or, you know, take whatever the overall sense of your movie is and, you know, compress it into 3 minutes. Do something that's a proof of concept that's going to show, you know, what this project's going to look like, what it's going to be, basically. So I'll give you a recap, and then we'll go into questions, essentially. So number one, you know, be proactive. You know, don't just, I've got this screenplay, somebody should make this for me. You know, do the contests, do the coverage, do the classes, do the books. You know, be good. Everybody writes and thinks that their screenplay is the best thing ever, but is it actually any good? You know, listen to the feedback and the coverage that you get, and then make changes based on that. Don't be so stubborn that you're not willing to make any changes. Again, not saying that everybody's feedback that they're going to give you is 100% right, but, you know, if they're a professional in the industry, generally they're established for some reason or another, and, you know, listen to what they have to say. Network, like we talked about, networking and what Terry did and how she was able to get some stuff done. You know, meet people, be collaborative. Don't be selfish. You know, one of the big things that I've seen over the years is people, you know, they've got a project and they're always, you know, we'll have somebody that's coming into town for a workshop or a film festival or whatever, and people will just essentially attack them and say, here's my project, what can you do for me? That, you know, that immediately is going to turn people off. You know, instead, you know, if you can build that relationship, you know, and here's what I've seen that happen a lot of times over the years. You know, somebody comes in town, you become friends with them on Facebook, you stay in touch, find ways that, well, you know, what can I do to help you? What can I do for you? There's a great article in Movie Maker magazine. You can do just do a little Google search and you should be able to find it. Flipping the Script: How to Navigate the Ups and Downs of the Spec Script Market. It's really interesting. Doesn't kind of go over like sort of all the stuff that we did there, but, you know, gives it a little bit different of a read as well. So I know that was a pretty kind of a broad, fast overview of, you know, the truth on how to get your screenplay made. You know, and really the truth is that there are no secrets. You know, there's no mysterious way that it's going to get done other than, you know, kind of hard work and finding ways to put your project out there. So let's, you know, I know we've been doing a little Q&A as we go along. How about any more questions? Yeah, I mean, just copyright your script. Yeah, I mean, literally, if you have a script that you've done, there's no reason you can't copyright it. It costs $35, and you upload it to copyright.gov, which is the United States Copyright Office, basically. So super easy to do. Just copyright it yourself. Costs you $35, and then you're protected in that way. Now, the big thing within the industry, you know, you always hear people stealing ideas and whatever, but there's so many similar ideas that are out there all the time. I don't know if there's any way to prevent anyone from, you know, taking an idea or stealing an idea, but the best way and the one thing you can do to protect yourself is just to copyright your screenplay. I know some people will say register it with the WGA, but the WGA registration does not give you any copyright protection at all. The only copyright protection is registering it with copyright.gov. Same thing where you mail a copy to yourself and don't open the envelope so it has a, that doesn't work either. Again, by law, the only thing you should do to copyright it is send it to the U.S. Copyright Office. Well, the first thing that you have to do is find a reason for them to read your screenplay, right? So again, I would do the same kind of thing. You get coverage from Screencraft or Blacklist, and even if you don't win any awards, win some awards. Because if you send a screenplay off to them, or if you try and find a way to contact them and say, hey, I've got a project I think you guys would really love. It has won this contest, it's won this contest, it placed third at this contest. I've gotten great coverage from Screencraft. They gave me a score of 130 out of 150. It's 8.5 out of 10 on Blacklist. Give them a reason to read your screenplay. Not just, here's something that I would like you to do, here's a project I think you'd be great for. Or why would they be great for that? What is it about that project that's special that would interest them? Then you've got to find a way to become one of those established writers where people ask you to do projects, essentially. And so kind of just like we talked about, nobody knows you in the industry currently, I'm assuming, guessing. So how do you get known within the industry? Blacklist, ink tip, screenplay contests, get your work out there and get people to read it essentially in those ways. It all depends on, does everybody hear the question, regarding proof of concept? Should it be a trailer? Should it be a 2-minute short? What could it be? It really depends on what your project is. It's going to be different depending on every single thing. I think the Whiplash proof of concept was 15 minutes long. You look at web series that are maybe just 3-minute web series and it's 10 different episodes or whatever it might be. Somebody who does an hour-long podcast, that's a proof of concept. There's a lot of ways to skin the cat, I guess you would say. No. Usually the screenwriting, I don't think any screenwriting contest would be successful if you were giving up your intellectual property rights to your own screenplay. There's generally terms and conditions. I would just read through I know nobody likes to read terms and conditions, but if you are submitting a screenplay for something, definitely read the terms and conditions and make sure you're not giving up your any intellectual property rights, which typically screenplay contests don't do. If you're sending it to a producer or somebody who's going to make your project, you don't want to hide the ending from them. They're not your audience. When it comes to the audience seeing your eventual project, sure, if there's a twist or something you don't want to reveal, that's fine. But whoever's making the project, you want to tell them what it is, because if it's a good twist, that will make them, like the project more. Yeah, there are 4 main film markets every year. Berlin takes place in February, Cannes that takes place in May, Toronto Film Market in September, and then the American Film Market in November. And so those are all good ones. Santa Monica, American Film Market in November. Well, Toronto's not that difficult to get to from here, but the most accessible as far as people being around. Yeah, it's all business. When it boils down to it, everybody's within the industry is doing it to make a living, and people want to get paid. So it's all business. The screenplay books that I mentioned earlier are all great when it comes to structure, really knowing that structure. It gets to the point, it's down to the point where, page 10 this should happen, you know, you've got your inciting incident by page 25, this happens by, you know, your midpoint, this happens by page 75. I mean, it is that detailed, and they are, you know, super crazy about structure. I mean, watch anything nowadays, whether it's, you know, any film that you see. If you, once you know structure, you can literally see it in every single thing that you watch. I drive my girlfriend crazy because I tell her exactly what's happening and everything that's coming up. I was like, okay, we're about the 10-minute mark, so this is going to happen next. And she drives her nuts, and I'm saying, yeah, and plot point one's coming up right now, and this is what they're going to do, plot point one, and then they're going to, and she's like, let's just stop and watch the movie, you know, and we enjoy it for a change. So I was like, this is how I, anyways. But every single thing is written in that way, where they follows that, you know, very rigid structure.